Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank Encore Luxury Living for sponsoring our family wellness programming. The Family Wellness Committee was created this year to bring current topics to families in our community to ensure that we have a healthy future together. Tonight, we will be focusing on our children and the importance of socialization, especially during this time. My name is Melanie Witkes. I oversee all of the early childhood, youth, teen, and family programming here at the Mid-Island YJCC. I will be moderating tonight's discussion. We are lucky to have Jennifer Zash, psychologist, who was just on the Drew Barrymore show, and Josh Henkel, our amazing camp director, here with us tonight. I will let each of them introduce themselves before we move into our discussion. Jen?
Thank you so much, Melanie. And I'm really, really excited to be a part of this panel. This is something I just feel so strongly about. Just a little bit about like, who am I? So I've been a school psychologist for 20 years in the Great Neck Public Schools, and I've worked with kids from preschool all the way to college age. I was a preschool teacher prior to being a school psychologist. Last 14 years with teenagers. And I also recently developed a program called the Mindful Mama Parenting Program. And I'm a mom myself of 2 young kids who attended the Y when they were younger. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about camp and the importance of socializing and play. And yeah, that's a snapshot.
Great. Thank you, Jen. We're happy to have you here. Josh?
Thank you. Thank you for having me part of this conversation. I have been at the Mid-Island Day Camp since 1994, which is too many decades I don't want to count. And this summer will be my 14th summer as director for Mid-Island Day Camp. Haven't missed a summer. We opened last summer. We're happy to have tons of kids out here this summer. I love what I do, loving giving kids a great summer. And I think this is going to be an important conversation for families and our campers.
Great. We're excited for this summer. It is going to be amazing.
Yes, it is.
Jen, can you just start off our conversation by talking a little bit about socialization and why it's important and the impact that COVID-19 over the last years really had on our children?
Sure. So, I mean, I think we all kind of know what socialization is, right? So interacting with others, and that can be in many different contexts. But what it really is to me, when I think about socialization, it's like the gold, right? It's what we live for. It's our legacy. It is like, the Wizard of Oz, when all of a sudden you see the world in color. It's when we look back on our greatest memories in childhood and throughout our life. It's connecting with others, right? And for kids, it's particularly important. So as a psychologist and researcher mind, the number one predictor of future success in children is a child's ability to play and to socialize. So we have a tendency as parents to focus so much on things like academics and getting them involved in all of these structured activities and being respectful and following these rules and everything. And while there is value in all of that, there's nothing really more valuable, and now more than ever, than socialization, because through socialization we learn how to understand our own feelings, how to understand others' emotions, perspective taking, we learn problem solving and conflict resolution. We learn our passions, and very often then that leads to our purpose, right? So there's so much that that children and all of us really get out of socialization. And in terms of COVID, we've been behind the screen, and our kids have been behind the screen. And so when we are with somebody in person, so like in camp in particular, there's an energy exchange. And now it's not woo-woo anymore. There's actually like science to back up the energy that exchanges between 2 human beings or more when we're together. And so I'm so excited for kids to be able to go back to camp. My own children did not go last summer. And just to give you a context of like how I was as a parent when everything was going on with COVID, we get into like our mama bear kind of mode, and I was really nervous. It was a pandemic, right? And so there was so many unknowns. And now a year later, we have a better handle, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And to me, like, that light has always been, and now more than ever, our children. And to think about like the fun that they're going to have at camp and in the summer, and not be behind screens, and be able to interact. It's just so important, and so exciting. And the brain development of young kids is critical when they're little. So we have to kind of like undo some of that screen time with green time. And that's something that I've always felt so passionate about prior to COVID, and now more than ever. Like, I'm telling everybody, like, take off your shoes, get out into the grass, and just that power of play. That's where we feel alive and joy. And so we want kids to have that back.
Absolutely. I agree. I do think that there finally is a light at the end of the tunnel right now, and getting outdoors and getting our kids away from those screens, it's time, and camp is a perfect venue for that. That provides them, fresh air and some structure, but the socialization, that's so important. So, how do you feel, Jen, about how should parents handle if a child is anxious, about attending camp? How should parents address that? A lot of kids, like you said, your own children, my own children, didn't go to camp last summer. Mm-hmm. So, and these sometimes are kids who've been going since they're 2, but they missed that summer. They got used to a different type of summer, and now there's some anxiety with returning. So any suggestions for parents on?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm so glad that you asked that. Our kids look to us, right? And so if we're anxious, they're going to be anxious. So if that is the case for you, then call me. So I have jenzash.com, and I'm happy to provide, seriously, like, any, as a mom too, like, I understand the unknown is scary, but just like anything else in life, a lot of it's the anticipation, right? But most kids are, or a lot of kids, especially if they're going to be going to camp, are probably in school, right? And so letting kids know what to expect, and that you would never, as a parent, send your child somewhere that they weren't safe, and that you're so excited that they're going to be able to play and have fun. And so if it's believable, then they will believe it. So it's really all about the parent getting comfortable and working on that anxiety if they have something themselves. And there's so many teachable moments in the COVID experience that we've had. And so, like, we've heard of like post-traumatic stress disorder, right? But there's a lot of research out about post-traumatic growth. And to me, like, there is so much opportunity to teach our kids about, like, now we appreciate so much more just like the connections that we have and what's really important in life. We all kind of slowed down. And so if parents can start to reframe, if they're not looking at the positives, and if they are anxious, if they can start to reframe their thinking, their kids are going to respond to that.
Absolutely.
I hope that answers the question.
No, you definitely did. And you know what? I'm sure that's even a concern that Josh is hearing from parents on the phone when they call. They want to sign their kids up. They've signed their kids up, but I'm sure he's hearing that concern also. So, it's definitely out there. Josh, can you talk a little bit about, what were some of the ways we saw how important socialization was for our kids at camp last summer, coming out of a lockdown? Entering into camp for the kids who did go. I'm sure you saw kids in a very different light than you saw in summers before.
Yes. One of the biggest things for camp for me is that, explaining to parents and families that the largest number of social learning occurs during the summer. And time with other children is a crucial part of growing up. Looking back at 2020, most of the households, had every aspect of their everyday life. Socialization moved to a single location. School for children, work for parents, downtime, relaxation were all together in their home. They spent a lot of time together each and every day. And we all remember it. Sports were canceled, birthday parties were canceled, play dates with your friends were replaced with Zoom calls over the computer. Relationships with peers, and I'm sure Jen would agree, are how kids learn about cooperation, trust, loyalty, and just how to, not just receive support from their parents, but also give it to others and give it to their friends. For us, 2020, this is why the opening of camp was crucial for children, so they could begin spending time with other children again, which was our dream. Our staff were determined to create a safe and fun environment where children could enjoy the summer camp experience while also navigating the changes necessary for camp to operate during the pandemic. Last summer, we ran for over 300 kids and we had no positive cases. One of the major aspects were campers arrived very anxious and concerned because they had been experiencing the new normal. They were cooped up with their parents and siblings for 3 months. This was their first time being able to play with their friends again, receive care and guidance from someone outside of their household. Our staff spent extra time preparing and researching ways to help with the added anxieties present in our society, and we tried to assimilate them to socializing with friends again. After the first week, it was amazing. We could feel our campers' anxieties melting away, and once again, it became a safe place for them. In turn, they were upset because they had to leave as opposed to come. Summer 2020 was an amazing time, and I think the children had a really great time.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, it sounds like you guys had your work cut out for you last summer, and I couldn't have framed it better. How you said that their home became the location for everything, and socialization, their parents' work, their school. Really, I mean, people turned their homes into hibachi restaurants just for things to do last spring. So, you really said it perfectly.
What I can say is, the two most memorable moments of the summer were the first day and the last day of camp. The first day, the anxiety, the stress that everybody had showing up to camp, watching the kids, working with them, getting them out of their parents' cars, helping them enjoy the outdoors. And then it was the last day of camp, seeing all the parents pull up, crying in tears, just thanking us for opening and helping their child grow, because a lot of them negatively grew, like they were being negatively affected by the lockdown and the quarantine, and what we gave them that summer was really important to them, and it kind of touched us all as a staff emotionally.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback a little bit on that point, in early childhood, we reopened here for summer and saw we had to reteach social skills to a lot of the children. There was a big gap that formed over those few months, especially for children who were really just starting to learn their social skills at ages 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again in September for the kids who didn't come back until the school year started. And it was just a reteaching. And it was not only interactions between peers, but we had to teach them how to exist in an environment where they weren't with their parents, and reteach that ability for them to rely on other people, to teach them how to wait for things when, they were potentially used to more instant gratification in the home setting, to teach them how to wait their turn. So our teachers had their work cut out for them at the beginning of the year, but I can say we are, nearing the end of the school year, and these children are all in exactly the right place where they should be, and we all, got over that hump together. Okay, Josh, can you talk a little bit about what plans you have in place to combat needs for children to socialize during this summer? It's different than last summer. We've come a long way, but, there's probably still some concerns out there among parents.
Absolutely. For 2021, we have many of our campers who were there last summer returning, but a lot of campers who didn't go to camp last summer coming back to us, and a lot of new campers coming as well. We've spent the entire off season working on ways to make camp better. We're expanding certified child psychologists and social workers on staff to help with camper staff and parents who have anxieties leading up to the summer and throughout the camp season. We plan to support our families every way possible during this summer as we transition themselves and their kids to camp again. When the pandemic hit in 2020, we had to remove and change a lot of the activities that make the camp experience great. This summer, with all the research, New York State regulations, and all the information available, we're going to be able to safely bring back activities, special events, and make camp again. Remote learning has been different than traditional learning in the past, and we have parents who want to help their children continue to learn over the summer. Thanks to a grant from the UJA Federation, we've hired extra tutors, so all of our campers and families who want tutoring service during the summer are able to get them as well.
That's amazing. That's great. What about, do you have any fun new activities or equipment planned for this summer?
Yeah, and again, for 2021, thanks to all the research and all the guidance, we're bringing back many of the special activities this summer. We're going to have all of our we're going to have entertainers coming to camp again, obviously practicing social distance, game shows, performances. We're bringing back our Maccabi games on a larger scale, which is our color war, which is a huge fan favorite. Other camp staples like foam party, wet and wild day, inflatable Olympics, carnival, all these things that make camp will be back this summer. And it's going to be great. And we've also put a lot of money into camp. We've renovated our pool complex. We've built new program buildings to expand and give children space to do all these activities. And we're going to install some new playgrounds as well for the kids to play on. We're really excited to see how great summer's going to look for all of our campers.
That sounds fantastic. These kids are going to have an amazing summer. And to turn it back to you, Jen, if you could tell us, talk a little bit about something we've learned this year that, throughout this whole pandemic, it's been quite the learning experience, I think, for all of us. If there was something that we could continue or keep or take away from this year and continue into the 2021-22 school year, what would it be?
I think there's so many gifts actually that came out of this experience if you look at it that way. The story, that we tell ourselves, the lens in which we see the world really comes from sort of the narrative, right? And the actions that we take and everybody takes around us. And when there was inaction, like for a long time, people, I think, started to realize just the power of connection, and just appreciating our family and friends and nature and getting out, all those things. It's kind of like when you have a cold, you don't then suddenly you can breathe again as you start to feel better. You took it for granted. And it's the same kind of thing. We took for granted just like the important relationships I think that we had in our lives and have in our lives. And I think that is something that is definitely a COVID keeper. And I think that it also kind of brought us back to the beauty in which children see the world. So getting back to things like curiosity and creativity and families and everyone, we're doing more of those kind of like old school games or art or taking nature walks, which like that was the only place we could go for so long. So connecting with nature, connecting with like sort of our inner child, that sense of awe, those are things that I think are such beautiful gifts that came out of COVID that I hope that people continue to hold on to. And with all of that comes gratitude. And gratitude is the number one predictor of wellness. And this is a family wellness meeting. So know that and teach your children gratitude. If you can institute like a gratitude practice in my family, at dinner, Renee, we do sort of like a highs and lows. And we really do think about, because it's what we pay attention to, right? There's parts of our day every day that are not so great, and then there's good parts. So it's what we choose to focus on, and we're constantly modeling that for our kids. So the other piece is gratitude.
Absolutely. And I agree, we were given so many gifts during this difficult time, and believe it or not, there are some COVID keepers out there. Did either of you have anything else that you'd like to add this evening to our discussion?
I guess the only other thing that I thought too is just resilience. Like our kids and all of us are a lot stronger than we think. And so many parents that I had talked to, especially earlier on in the pandemic, like they were grieving the loss of anticipated things that their kids couldn't do, where their kids wouldn't have known necessarily, but it was their parents, again, like creating this story. And I would just suggest that parents kind of catch themselves of how often we predict the future and the story that goes along with that. And the more we can catch ourselves doing that, then we build that awareness, and then we can shift things. And we can get into the present moment of like, what is happening right now, and how can I connect with my kids, and how can I get them excited for the summer and prior to COVID even. Just we are living in a very different time than like when I grew up. It's, you know, the pressure on kids in school is tremendous, and everything, even play, is like structured typically. And so that was prior to COVID. Now more than ever, it's just, I think camp is going to be so critical for kids to have a place to just be free. So yeah, just to kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah. And social learning and the building of social skills, you know, children, they've persevered this year. I mean, my daughter started kindergarten, and for me as a parent, it was tough having her go to school with plastic barriers and masks on. And I knew it was safe, but this was her meeting all of her friends, and she made friends and she's built bonds with children. But it has been stunted by what's going on. So I am so happy to see her out at camp, to be able to play with friends and just build on a lot of the skills that I think she hasn't been able to develop this year. But she's strong, she's great, and I think she's going to bloom this summer. So I think understanding camp, the amount of social skills and social learning that occurs, and why it's important to send your kids is really important lesson from this whole thing.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for joining me here tonight to take part in this panel discussion. And I think we're all looking forward to a great summer and a great school year in 2021, and hopefully things getting back to a little bit more of a normal. And thank you to everyone who joined us to listen to our discussion. Have a great night.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night.